How do you react when your own son quietly signs papers meant to erase you? Why would a lawyer stop reading, "Look at my son," and tell him to sit down? I didn't raise my voice. I let the system speak for me. My name is Michael Harrington, and I'm 61 years old. I spent 33 years working in construction project management, the last 15 as a senior manager overseeing commercial builds across 3 states. I retired 2 years ago with a modest pension and some smart investments I'd made over the decades. I live alone in a 3-bedroom house in the suburbs, the same house where I raised my son after his mother left us when he was 7 years old. People who know me would probably describe me as quiet, disciplined, the kind of man who shows up on time, keeps his word, and doesn't make a fuss about things. I'm not the type to demand attention or credit, never have been. I figure if you do right by people, they'll remember it. That's what I believed anyway. The kitchen where I'm standing right now hasn't changed much in 27 years. Same oak cabinets I installed myself. Same tile floor I laid one weekend when Daniel was at soccer camp. The morning light comes through the window above the sink at the same angle it always has, cutting across the small table where Daniel used to do his homework while I made dinner. I'm holding a cup of coffee, black, no sugar. It's 6:30 in the morning on a Tuesday. The house is silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of old wood settling. This is my routine now. Wake up at 5:45, make coffee, read the news on my tablet, maybe go for a walk if the weather's decent. It's a simple life, a quiet life, the kind of life you earn after raising a child on your own while working 60-hour weeks and never missing a parent-teacher conference. I think about that a lot these days, about all the things I didn't miss. When Susan left, she didn't leave a note or make a scene. She just packed 2 suitcases while Daniel was at school and I was at work, and by the time I got home that evening, she was gone. There was a single page on the kitchen counter, typed, not handwritten. It said she couldn't do it anymore. The marriage, the routine, the life we'd built. She said she felt like she was disappearing and she needed to find herself again. I read that note 3 times, then I folded it and put it in a drawer. Daniel would be home from school in an hour, and he'd need dinner. That was 27 years ago. I never spoke badly about Susan to Daniel. When he asked where Mom was, I told him she needed some time away and that it wasn't his fault. When he asked if she was coming back, I told him I didn't know. When he stopped asking, I didn't bring it up. The truth is, Susan called maybe twice a year at first. Birthday cards came irregularly. By the time Daniel was 12, the calls had stopped altogether. I never pushed for child support because I didn't need it, and I didn't want the legal drama. I just focused on making sure my son had everything he needed. Everything. I worked, but I made it work around him. I coached his Little League team even though I didn't know much about baseball. I learned. I showed up to every school play, every awards ceremony, every science fair. When he wanted to learn guitar, I bought him lessons. When he decided he hated guitar and wanted to try tennis instead, I signed him up for tennis camp. I was there. That's what fathers do, right? You show up, you provide, you don't make it about yourself. I remember his high school graduation like it was yesterday, though it was 16 years ago now. The ceremony was held in the auditorium at Jefferson High, the same school I'd attended back in the 70s. The place hadn't changed much. Same maroon seats, same stage with the heavy velvet curtains, same smell of floor wax and teenage anxiety. I sat near the middle, maybe 10 rows back. Not front and center because I didn't need to be seen, just close enough to watch Daniel cross that stage and accept his diploma. The auditorium was packed. Families filled every seat, everyone dressed up, cameras ready. I could hear parents around me chatting excitedly, pointing out their kids in the sea of blue graduation gowns. To my left, a mother was crying already, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue even though the ceremony hadn't started. To my right, a father kept checking his camera, making sure the battery was charged. I sat alone, not because I wanted to, particularly, but there was no one else to sit with, no extended family in town. Susan certainly wasn't there. It was just me, same as it had always been. When they called Daniel's name, I felt something tighten in my chest. Pride, yes, but something else too, something I couldn't quite name at the time. He walked across that stage with confidence, shook the principal's hand, accepted his diploma with a smile. The families around me erupted in cheers for their own kids. I clapped, steady and measured, watching my son walk back to his seat. He didn't look for me in the crowd. I told myself it didn't matter. Told myself he was focused on the moment, on his friends, and on everything that was happening around him. 17-year-olds don't scan crowds for their parents at graduation. That's normal. After the ceremony ended, families flooded onto the field for photos. I made my way through the crowd, looking for Daniel's blue gown, his dark hair. I found him surrounded by friends, laughing, posing for pictures. I waited at the edge of the group, not wanting to interrupt. One of his friend's mothers, I can't remember her name now, noticed me standing there and smiled. "Michael, come on, get in here." She waved me over. "We're getting a group shot of all the families." I stepped forward, and for a moment I thought Daniel would make space for me. But he was already moving, arm around a friend's shoulder, pulling the group in a different direction. "Let's get one by the banner," he called out. "Daniel," I said, but my voice got lost in the noise. The mother who'd called me over gave me an apologetic look and hurried after the group. I stood there for a moment, hands in my pockets, watching. Eventually, Daniel circled back. "Hey, Dad," he said, slightly breathless, still grinning. "Thanks for coming." Of course," I said. "I'm proud of you." "Thanks." He glanced over his shoulder. "Listen, a bunch of us are going to Benny's for pizza. Is that cool?" "Sure," I said. "Do you need money?" "Nah, Jake's mom is treating everyone." He shifted his weight, eager to get back to his friends. "I'll be home by 11. "Sounds good?" He started to turn, then paused. "Oh, and Dad, could you take my gown home? I don't want to carry it around." He handed me the blue polyester gown, still warm from his body, and jogged back to his friends without waiting for an answer. I stood there holding that gown, watching him disappear into the crowd. Looking back now, that was probably the moment I should have paid more attention to. The moment when I realized I'd become part of the background, a person to hand things off to, a logistics coordinator rather than someone to celebrate with. But I didn't think about it that way at the time. I told myself I was being a good father, giving him space, letting him be independent. The years after high school followed a predictable pattern. Daniel went to State University about 2 hours away. I helped him move into the dorms, carried boxes up 3 flights of stairs because the elevator was broken. His roommate's whole family was there, parents and both sets of grandparents, everyone buzzing around, decorating the room, setting things up. I helped Daniel unpack his clothes and set up his desk. When everything was done, I asked if he wanted to grab lunch before I headed back. "Actually, the orientation stuff starts in like an hour," he said, "so I should probably stick around here." "Right, of course." I drove home that afternoon with an empty car and a strange feeling I couldn't quite identify. Not sadness, exactly. Maybe just the awareness that a chapter was ending. He came home for holidays at first. Thanksgiving, Christmas, spring break. We'd sit in the kitchen and I'd make his favorite meals, pot roast, mashed potatoes, apple pie from scratch. He'd tell me about his classes, his friends, his plans. I'd listen, ask questions, try to be supportive without being overbearing. But even then, I noticed he was already pulling away. Not dramatically, just gradually. He'd spend more time on his phone than talking to me. He'd make plans to meet up with high school friends rather than spending evenings at home. When I suggested we watch a movie together or go see a ball game, he'd say he was tired or had other commitments. By his junior year, the visits became shorter. Senior year, he stayed on campus for Thanksgiving. "I've got this huge project due right after break," he explained over the phone. "It's easier if I just stay here and power through it." "I understand," I said, and I did. I remembered being that age, feeling like the world was expanding and home was shrinking. After graduation, he got a job at a marketing firm in the city, about 4 hours away. The pay wasn't great, but it was a start. He rented an apartment with 2 roommates. I helped him move again, drove the rental truck myself because he couldn't afford the insurance for a driver under 25. That's when I started noticing the paperwork language. We were sitting in his new apartment, boxes everywhere, furniture half assembled. He was filling out forms for something, renter's insurance, I think, or maybe a bank account. I was putting together a bookshelf he'd bought from a discount furniture store. "Hey, Dad, what's your social security number?" he called from the kitchen table. "Why do you need that?" "Emergency contact info, in case something happens." I gave it to him, and he wrote it down. But then I heard him talking to himself, muttering as he filled out the form. "Independent now, no parental guarantees, sole responsibility." I paused with the screwdriver in my hand. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, fine. Just reading the fine print." He didn't look up. Something about it felt off, but I couldn't articulate why. He was 22 years old. Of course he was independent. That was the goal, right? Raise your kid to be self-sufficient, to not need you anymore. Still, hearing him say it out loud, "Independent now?" made something shift in my chest. I finished the bookshelf. We ordered pizza. He thanked me for helping. The next morning, I drove home alone. Over the next few years, our communication became sporadic. In texts mostly, the occasional phone call. He always sounded busy, always had something going on. A work project, a social event, a weekend trip with friends. "We should get together soon," he'd say. "Any time," I'd respond. "My door's always open." But months would pass without a visit. Then he met Claire. I didn't meet her right away. He mentioned her casually during a phone call. Seeing someone, nothing serious yet, but I could hear something different in his voice, a kind of excitement he hadn't shown in a long time. 6 months later, he told me it was getting serious. A year after that, they were engaged. I met Claire twice before the wedding. The first time was at a restaurant for dinner. She was polished and professional, with perfect posture and a firm handshake. She worked in corporate communications for her family's company, something in manufacturing. She asked me polite questions about my career, nodded attentively when I spoke, and made all the right responses. But there was a distance to it, like she was conducting an interview rather than getting to know her future father-in-law. The second time I met her was at their engagement party, held at a country club I'd never heard of. The place was all white tablecloths and crystal chandeliers, waiters in black vests carrying trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres I couldn't pronounce. I felt out of place the moment I walked in. Daniel spotted me and came over, Claire on his arm. "Dad, you made it." "Of course," I said. "Congratulations again." "Thanks. Let me introduce you to some people." He led me around the room, making introductions. Claire's parents, her brother, various aunts, uncles, cousins. Everyone was warm but formal. They shook my hand, said nice things, then quickly moved on to other conversations. At one point, I overheard Daniel talking to a small group near the bar. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I was just standing nearby, holding a glass of wine I hadn't touched. So, how'd you two meet?" someone asked. Claire launched into the story, a chance encounter at a professional networking event. They'd both reached for the same business card on a table. Very romantic. "And Daniel," the woman continued, "how'd you get into marketing? Did your family have connections in the industry?" There was a pause. I waited for him to mention my years of project management, the discipline I'd taught him, the work ethic I'd modeled. "I had some great mentors in college," he said instead. "Professor Williams really pushed me to pursue it, and I did a couple internships that opened doors." The conversation moved on. I set down my wine glass and walked outside to get some air. It wasn't that what he'd said was wrong. He did have good mentors. He did work hard during his internships. But the way he'd phrased it, I had some great mentors. It was like I'd never existed, like he'd raised himself. I stood on the terrace looking out at the manicured golf course and told myself I was being oversensitive. This was his night, his achievement. He didn't need to credit his father in front of his fiancée's family. That would be strange, actually. Too needy. But still. When I went back inside, the party was in full swing. Daniel and Claire were on the dance floor, surrounded by friends. I stood at the edge of the crowd, watching. No one asked me to dance. No one pulled me into a conversation. I was just there, present, but invisible. I left before the cake was cut. Told Daniel I had an early morning the next day, which was a lie. He hugged me quickly and said, "Thanks for coming, Dad." "Any time?" I said. On the drive home, I kept replaying that conversation. I had some great mentors. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself I was reading too much into things. I told myself that being a father meant stepping back, letting your child shine without needing recognition. That's what I told myself. But somewhere deep in my chest, in a place I didn't want to examine too closely, something had started to crack. The wedding came and went. It was elegant and expensive, held at the same country club. I walked Daniel down the aisle at Claire's mother's suggestion, since Susan wasn't there and someone needed to do it. I gave a short toast at the reception that I'd practiced for weeks. People clapped politely. After the wedding, Daniel and Claire moved into a townhouse in the suburbs. He got promoted to junior executive at Claire's family company. She kept rising through the ranks in communications. From the outside, they looked perfect, the kind of young couple who'd made it. Good jobs, nice house, bright future. But I hardly heard from them. Not because they were unkind. They weren't. They were just busy. Busy building their life. A life that didn't seem to include me. 3 months ago, a certified envelope arrived in my mailbox. I wasn't expecting anything. Most of my mail is junk these days. Credit card offers, grocery store coupons, community newsletters I don't read. But this envelope was different. Thick, formal. Certified delivery, which meant I had to sign for it. The return address was a law firm downtown. Brennan and Associates. I stood in my driveway, holding the envelope, feeling that same tightness in my chest I'd felt at Daniel's graduation all those years ago. For a moment, I considered not opening it. Whatever was inside, I knew it wasn't good news. Certified mail from lawyers never is. But I'm not the type to avoid things. I went inside, sat down at the kitchen table, and opened the envelope. Inside were documents. Legal documents. Pages and pages of them. Dense with text and clauses and terms I didn't fully understand on first read. But one phrase jumped out at me immediately. Petition for legal emancipation of paternal rights. I read it again, slower. Petition for legal emancipation of paternal rights. My son had filed paperwork to legally sever our relationship. I set the documents down on the table and stared at them. Outside, I could hear a dog barking, a car door slamming, normal suburban sounds on a normal day. Inside, everything had gone very, very quiet. I don't know how long I sat there. 10 minutes, maybe 20. Finally, I picked up the documents again and began to read. The paperwork was dated 3 weeks earlier, which meant Daniel had been planning this for at least that long, maybe longer. The cover letter explained that this was a preliminary notice and that a formal hearing would be scheduled within 60 days. I read through the entire packet twice, trying to make sense of the legal language. The core argument was simple. Daniel was a fully independent adult who no longer required or desired any legal, financial, or familial connection to his biological father. The document cited his age, his financial stability, his marriage, and something called mutual benefit of separation for estate planning purposes. Estate planning. I set the papers down and walked to the window. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across my backyard. The yard where I'd taught Daniel to throw a football, where we'd set up a tent one summer and camped out even though we were 15 feet from the house. Estate planning. He was erasing me so that my potential inheritance wouldn't complicate his and Claire's financial future. That's what it amounted to. He wanted to make sure that when I passed, there would be no confusion, no claims, no legal entanglement. He wanted a clean break. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Not anger, exactly. Not yet. Just a kind of numb realization. My son wanted to legally pretend I'd never existed. I thought about calling him, picking up the phone and asking him what the documents meant, giving him a chance to explain. Maybe there was some context I was missing, some legal reason that made sense. But I didn't call. Instead, I went to my home office, a converted spare bedroom with a desk and filing cabinet, and unlocked the bottom drawer. Inside were files I hadn't looked at in years. Financial records, property deeds, legal documents of my own. I pulled out a specific folder and opened it on my desk. 28 years ago, when Daniel was 6 years old and Susan had just left, I'd met with a financial planner, a man named Gerald Cho, who'd helped me set up a trust fund for Daniel's future. I'd been making steady money by then, and I wanted to make sure my son would be taken care of if anything happened to me. Gerald had advised setting up what he called a conditional trust. The money would be there for Daniel, but with certain provisions to ensure it was used responsibly and that Daniel understood the value of what he was receiving. I'd put every spare dollar I had into that trust for years. By the time Daniel graduated college, it had grown substantially. Enough to pay off a house, enough to fund a comfortable retirement, enough to change someone's life. I never told Daniel about it, not because I was hiding it exactly, but because I wanted him to build his own life first, to work hard, to value money, to not take anything for granted. I'd planned to tell him about the trust when he turned 35, or when he had kids, or when some life event made it feel like the right time, but I never got around to it. Now, reading through the trust documents, I found the section I'd remembered, the clause that Gerald had insisted on including. Beneficiary access to trust funds is contingent upon maintaining familial relationship with trust grantor. In the event of legal separation, disownment, or formal severance of parental relationship initiated by beneficiary, all trust assets revert to grantor's control and beneficiary status is revoked. Gerald had explained it to me at the time. This is a respect clause, Michael. It protects you from your son taking your money and then cutting you out of his life. It ensures that access to the inheritance comes with the expectation of maintaining the relationship. I'd thought it was overkill back then. I couldn't imagine Daniel ever doing something like that. But here we were. I closed the folder and sat back in my chair. Daniel didn't know about the trust, which meant he didn't know what he was giving up by filing those papers, and I wasn't going to tell him. Not yet. Over the next few weeks, I started paying closer attention to Daniel's social media. I'd never been active on those platforms myself. I had accounts, but rarely posted or checked them. But now I found myself scrolling through his pages, looking for clues. What I found was a carefully curated version of his life. Photos of him and Claire at restaurants, at the beach, at corporate events. Smiling couples shots with captions like, "So grateful for this life," and "Blessed beyond measure." Posts about work achievements, promotions, new projects, awards, photos from holidays and trips. but nowhere in any of it was there a single mention of me. I scrolled back years, looking for some acknowledgement. A Father's Day post, a throwback photo, an old birthday message. Nothing. It was like I'd been digitally erased. I found a photo from Daniel's college graduation. He was wearing his cap and gown, diploma in hand, standing with a group of friends. The caption read, "Couldn't have made it this far without the people who believed in me." I'd been the one who paid for that education. I'd been the one working overtime to cover tuition so he wouldn't graduate with debt, but I wasn't in the photo. I wasn't mentioned in the caption. I wasn't part of the story he was telling. I closed the app and set my phone down. 2 weeks after receiving the certified envelope, I got a text from Daniel. "Hey, Dad, hope you're doing well. Quick question. Do you still have those old documents from when I was a kid? Birth certificate, social security card, that kind of thing?" I stared at the text for a long time before responding. "Yes. Why do you need them?" "Just organizing some paperwork for Claire's family lawyer. Estate stuff, nothing urgent." "Estate stuff." "I can make copies," I replied. "Actually, originals would be better. Could I swing by and grab them next week?" "Sure." 3 days later, he showed up at the house. It was a Saturday afternoon, and I'd spent the morning preparing. I'd pulled all the documents he'd requested. Birth certificate, social security card, vaccination records, school transcripts. Everything was in a manila folder on the kitchen table. I also made lunch. Sandwiches and chips. His favorite when he was growing up. Turkey and Swiss on wheat, extra pickles. He arrived 20 minutes late, dressed casually in jeans and a polo shirt. He knocked twice and then let himself in with the spare key I'd never asked him to return. "Hey, Dad," he called out. "In the kitchen?" He came in and glanced at the folder on the table. "Great. You found everything?" "Yes. I also made lunch." He looked at the sandwiches, then checked his watch. "Oh, man, I appreciate it, but I can't stay. I've got to meet Claire at her parents' place in an hour." "It'll only take a few minutes to eat." "I really can't, Dad. Sorry." He picked up the folder and flipped through it quickly. "This is perfect. Thanks. Can I ask what this is for?" "Just estate planning stuff, like I said. Claire's dad is helping us set up some legal protections. You know how it is?" "No," I said quietly. "I don't know how it is. Can you explain?" He paused, folder in hand, and I saw a flicker of something cross his face. Discomfort, maybe, or guilt. "It's complicated," he said finally. "Legal stuff. Trust me, it's boring. I'd like to understand. Look, Dad, it's really not a big deal, just paperwork, dotting I's and crossing T's." He was lying. Not about the paperwork. That was real. But about it not being a big deal. I could see it in the way he wouldn't meet my eyes, the way he kept shifting his weight, eager to leave. "Are you removing me from your life?" I asked. The question hung in the air between us. Daniel's expression shifted. "What? No. Why would you think that?" "I received some documents a few weeks ago from a law firm." His face went carefully blank. "Oh, that." "Yes, that. Dad, listen. It's not what it looks like." "What does it look like?" He set the folder down on the table and ran a hand through his hair. "It's a legal formality, that's all. Claire's family has specific requirements for how they structure their estate plans. Because of her family's business, there are liability concerns, and their lawyers recommended that all immediate family members establish clear legal boundaries to protect assets in case of litigation or... "You're filing to legally separate yourself from me," I interrupted. "Don't dress it up. That's what the documents say." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "It's not personal." Those 4 words hit harder than anything else he could have said. "Not personal," I repeated. "You know what I mean? It's just legal protection. It doesn't change our relationship. Doesn't it?" "No, of course not. You're still my father. I'm still your son. This is just paperwork." "Paperwork that says you want to sever all legal and familial connections. In name only." "Then why do it?" He sighed, frustrated now. "Because Claire's family requires it. Because it makes financial sense. Because we're trying to build a future, and there are certain legal steps we need to take to protect that future. And I'm a liability in that future." "You're twisting what I'm saying." "Am I?" "Yes." He picked up the folder again. "Look, I didn't come here to argue. I came to get some documents, and I need to go." "Did you ever think to ask me first, before filing those papers?" "Honestly? No, because I knew you'd take it the wrong way." "The wrong way?" "Yeah, like you're doing right now." I looked at my son, this man I'd raised, this person I'd sacrificed everything for, and realized he genuinely didn't see the problem. In his mind, this was just a smart financial move, a logical step. The fact that it erased me didn't register as important. "Okay," I said quietly. "Okay, what?" "Okay, go." He hesitated. "Are you mad?" "No." "You seem mad." "I'm not. I'm just tired." He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "All right. Well, thanks for these." He held up the folder. I'll call you soon." "Sure." He left without eating the sandwich, without saying anything else. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time after he was gone, staring at the plate I'd prepared. Then I threw the whole thing in the trash. That night, I received a text from Daniel. "Hey, thanks again for the documents, and sorry if I was short earlier. I've got a lot on my mind with work and everything. Let's grab dinner soon. My treat." I didn't respond. The next morning, I called Eleanor Price, the family attorney I'd used for years. She'd handled my will, my estate planning, the trust setup. She was in her late 50s, precise and professional, and I trusted her completely. "Michael," she said when she answered. "It's been a while. How are you?" "I need to discuss something," I said. "Can we meet?" "Of course. This week?" "Today, if possible." There was a pause. Eleanor knew me well enough to know I didn't ask for urgent meetings without reason. "I can do 4 o'clock, she said. "I'll be there." Her office was downtown, in a mid-rise building with mirrored windows and a lobby that smelled like cleaning products and coffee. I took the elevator to the 8th floor and checked in with the receptionist. Eleanor came out to meet me herself. She was a tall woman with short gray hair and sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Michael," she shook my hand. "Come on back." Her office was neat and organized, bookshelves lined with legal texts, her desk clear except for a computer and a single framed photo of her daughter. "So," she said once we were seated, "what's going on?" I handed her the documents Daniel had filed. She put on her reading glasses and went through them carefully, page by page. I watched her face as she read. Her expression didn't change much, but I saw her eyebrows rise slightly when she got to the key sections. After several minutes, she set the papers down and removed her glasses. "Well," she said, "this is unusual." "Can he do this?" I asked. "Technically, yes. An adult child can petition to legally emancipate themselves from a parent. It's rare, and it typically happens in cases of abuse or extreme family dysfunction. But there's no legal requirement to prove harm. If he wants to file this, he can." "And what happens if it goes through?" "If a judge approves it, all legal connections between you and Daniel would be severed. He would no longer be your legal next of kin. You would have no inheritance rights to his estate and vice versa. Any existing legal documents naming each other, wills, powers of attorney, that sort of thing, would be nullified." "What about the trust?" Eleanor leaned back in her chair. "Ah, that's where this gets interesting." She pulled a file from her drawer, my file, and opened it. "The trust you established for Daniel has very specific conditional language. If Daniel initiates legal separation from you, the trust terms are voided and all assets revert to your control." "He doesn't know about the trust," I said. "I assumed as much." "Does he know about any of your assets?" "No." "Then he's making this decision blind." She tapped the papers he'd filed. "These documents reference estate planning, which suggests he thinks he's protecting himself and his wife from potential financial entanglement with you, but he doesn't realize that by filing this, he's forfeiting a substantial inheritance." "How substantial?" I asked. Eleanor did some quick calculations on her computer. "With market growth and the continued contributions you've made over the years, the trust is currently valued at approximately $1.4 million. The number hung in the air. "He's walking away from $1.4 million, she said, "and he doesn't even know it." I sat with that for a moment. "What do I need to do?" I asked. "If you want to fight this petition, we can file a counter-motion. We can argue that there's no legitimate cause for emancipation and request that a judge dismiss it." "I don't want to fight it." She looked at me carefully. "You want to let it go through?" "Yes." "Michael, I need to make sure you understand what that means. If this is approved, you lose all legal connection to your son. That's permanent." "I understand." "You won't be able to reverse it later. You won't have any claim to see grandchildren if they have them. You won't be notified if something happens to him medically. You'll be legally strangers." "I understand," I said again. Eleanor studied me. "May I speak candidly?" "Please." "You're angry." "No," I said. "I'm just done." She didn't argue with me. Instead, she made some notes on a legal pad. "All right," she said. "If you're going to let this go through, there are some things we need to do first. We need to formalize the trust revocation. We need to update your will to explicitly exclude Daniel as a beneficiary. We need to document your intent clearly so there's no ambiguity later. Can we do all of that before the hearing? Yes. The hearing won't be scheduled for at least a month, probably longer. That gives us time to prepare everything. Good. Michael. She set down her pen and looked at me directly. I have to ask, are you sure about this? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. She nodded slowly. Then let's get to work. 3 weeks after my meeting with Eleanor, I learned that Daniel and Claire were expecting a baby. I didn't learn it from Daniel. I learned it from a Facebook post. It was a Sunday morning. I was sitting in my kitchen with a cup of coffee, scrolling mindlessly through my phone, when the announcement appeared in my feed. A photo of Claire and Daniel, both smiling, holding a sonogram image between them. The caption read, "Our greatest adventure begins, baby Harrington, arriving March 2026. We couldn't be more excited." The post had been up for 3 hours and already had 200 likes and dozens of comments. Friends and family congratulating them, posting heart emojis, saying things like, "You're going to be amazing parents," and "so happy for you both." I stared at the photo for a long time, my first grandchild, and I was finding out about it on social media. I scrolled through the comments. Claire's mother had posted, "We are thrilled. Can't wait to meet our first grandbaby." Daniel's college roommate wrote, "Dude, congrats. Uncle Jake reporting for duty." There was no message for me, no phone call, no text, just a public announcement, like I was anyone else. I set my phone down and looked out the window. The morning was gray and cold, threatening rain. The trees in my backyard were losing their leaves, bare branches reaching toward a pale sky. I should call him, I thought. I should reach out, say congratulations, act like a normal father who just found out his son was having a baby. But I didn't move. Instead, I picked up my phone again and typed out a text. "Congratulations on the baby." Short, simple, no emotion. I hit send and waited. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 30. An hour later, he replied, "Thanks, Dad." That was it. No explanation for why he hadn't called, no apology for letting me find out through social media, no invitation to talk about it, to share in the excitement, to be part of the planning. Just, "Thanks, Dad?" I deleted the text thread and put my phone away. That afternoon, I went back to Eleanor's office. It was a Sunday, but she'd agreed to meet me because we were on a deadline. The hearing for Daniel's emancipation petition had been scheduled for 6 weeks out, and we had final documents to review. "Michael," she greeted me at the door. "Come in." Her office felt different on a Sunday, quieter, empty, like a stage after the show has ended. "I heard about the baby," she said as we sat down. I looked at her, surprised. "You mentioned Claire's last name during our previous meeting," she explained. "I may have looked her up. Social media is public." "Right. How are you handling it?" "I'm fine." "Michael?" "I am." She didn't push, but I could see the concern in her expression. "Let's go over the documents," she said, pulling out a folder. We spent the next hour reviewing everything. The trust revocation paperwork was complete. My updated will explicitly excluded Daniel as a beneficiary. All financial accounts had been adjusted to remove him as a secondary or emergency contact. Eleanor had also prepared a formal statement of intent, a legal document outlining my decision to allow the emancipation to proceed without contest, and my reasons for revoking the trust. "This will be filed with the court before the hearing," she explained. "It establishes the timeline and makes clear that Daniel initiated this process without knowledge of the financial consequences." "Will he see this before the hearing?" I asked. "No, it's submitted to the judge as part of the record, but it won't be made available to the petitioner until the hearing itself." "Good." Eleanor leaned back in her chair. "I have to ask one more time. Are you absolutely certain you want to do this? Once we file these documents, once the judge approves the emancipation, it's done. There's no going back." "I'm certain." "You'll be giving up all legal connection to your son and to your grandchild. You understand that?" "Yes." "And you're comfortable with that?" I thought about the question. Was I comfortable? No. Did it hurt? Yes. Was I angry? Maybe. But more than any of that, I was tired. Tired of being invisible, tired of being taken for granted, tired of giving everything and receiving nothing in return. "I spent 33 years raising that boy on my own," I said quietly. "I worked 60-hour weeks so we could have a good life. I never missed a parent-teacher conference, never missed a game or a recital. I paid for his education. I helped him move 3 times. I've been there for every milestone, every moment that mattered." "I know." "And now he wants to legally erase me so his wife's family can have clean estate planning." Eleanor was quiet. So yes, I continued, I'm comfortable with this, because if he doesn't want me in his life, then I'm not going to force it, and I'm certainly not going to fund a comfortable future for someone who considers me a liability. She nodded slowly. Okay, then we'll move forward. What happens at the hearing? You'll both be present. The judge will review the petition and any supporting documents. If everything is in order and there are no objections, the judge will approve it. The whole thing will probably take less than 30 minutes. And that's when he'll find out about the trust. Yes. The judge will review my statement of intent, which outlines the trust and the conditional clause. Daniel will be informed that by proceeding with the emancipation, he's forfeiting his inheritance. What do you think he'll do? Eleanor considered the question. Honestly, I don't know. He might try to withdraw the petition, but at that point it'll be too late. The conditions for trust revocation will have already been triggered the moment he filed. So either way, the money goes back to me? Correct. Then it's done, I said. We finished the paperwork and I drove home in the fading afternoon light. The radio was on, but I wasn't really listening. My mind kept circling back to that Facebook photo. Daniel and Claire, smiling, holding that sonogram image. A baby, my grandchild. I'd never see them grow up, never teach them to throw a football or help with homework or tell them stories about their father when he was young. I'd be a stranger. The thought should have broken me, should have made me reconsider, pick up the phone, try to fix things, but instead, I just felt numb. 2 weeks before the hearing, I got an unexpected call. Michael, it's Robert Hale. Robert was an old coworker from my project management days. We'd worked together for almost 15 years, collaborated on dozens of builds, stayed friends even after I retired. Robert, how are you? I'm good. Listen, I was having coffee with Jim Brennan yesterday. You remember Jim? Used to work site security on the Riverside project. Sure. Well, Jim mentioned that his sister works at a law firm downtown, Brennan and Associates. My stomach tightened. That was the firm handling Daniel's petition. Okay, I said carefully. And she mentioned, in passing, that they're handling some kind of family emancipation case. I didn't think much of it until Jim mentioned the last name. Harrington. I was quiet. Michael, Robert said, what's going on? I hadn't planned on telling anyone. Hadn't wanted to talk about it, to explain it, to hear people's reactions. But Robert was someone I trusted, someone who knew me well enough to read between the lines. So I told him. I explained about the petition, about the trust, about Daniel's systematic erasure of me from his life. I kept my voice level and factual, but Robert knew me well enough to hear what I wasn't saying. When I finished, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. Jesus, Michael, he said finally. I don't even know what to say. There's nothing to say. It is what it is. What are you going to do? I'm going to let him walk away. And the money? Goes back to me. Another silence. Good, Robert said firmly. Let him learn the hard way. I'm not doing it to teach him a lesson. Maybe not, but he's going to learn one anyway. After we hung up, I sat in my home office staring at the filing cabinet where I kept all my important documents. The trust paperwork, the property deeds, the investment statements. Everything I'd built, everything I'd saved, it had all been meant for Daniel. Now it would stay with me. And the strangest part? I didn't feel guilty about it. I felt relieved. A week before the hearing, Daniel texted me. Hey, Dad, wanted to give you a heads up. That legal stuff we talked about is moving forward. There's a hearing next Friday at 10 a.m. You don't have to come if you don't want to. It's just a formality. I read the text 3 times. You don't have to come if you don't want to. He genuinely believed I'd just stay home, that I'd let this happen without being present. I replied, I'll be there. His response came quickly. You sure? It's really not necessary. I'm sure. Okay. See you there then. That was Thursday. On Friday night, very late, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the hearing, about what would happen, about how Daniel would react when he learned the truth. At midnight, I got out of bed and went to my office. I opened the filing cabinet and pulled out every document related to the trust. I spread them across my desk and read through them again, making sure I understood every clause, every condition, every detail. It was all there, clear as day. The trust existed. It was substantial, and Daniel was about to lose access to all of it. I put the documents back in their folder and locked the drawer. Then I picked up my phone and called Eleanor. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice thick with sleep. Michael, it's midnight. I know, I'm sorry. Is everything okay? I just needed to ask you something. At the hearing, when you explain the trust to Daniel, when he realizes what he's giving up. Yes? Will he be able to stop it? Will he be able to withdraw the petition? No, Eleanor said. The conditions for trust revocation were triggered the moment he filed the petition. Even if he withdraws now, the trust clause stands. So, no matter what, he loses the money. Correct. I was quiet for a moment. Michael, Eleanor said gently, are you having second thoughts? No. Then why are you calling? Because I needed to hear you say it out loud. I needed to be sure. You're sure? Yes. Then try to get some sleep. I'll see you in the morning. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness of my office for a long time. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tomorrow, my son would learn that actions have consequences. Tomorrow, the papers would speak louder than I ever could. I went back to bed, but I didn't sleep. The hearing was scheduled for 10 o'clock on a Friday morning at the county courthouse downtown. I arrived 30 minutes early, parked in the public lot, and walked across the street to the gray concrete building with the American flag hanging limp in the cold November air. Security was minimal. Metal detector, bag check, a board guard who waved me through after a glance at my driver's license. The lobby was busy with people moving in different directions, lawyers in suits carrying briefcases, families clustered on benches waiting for their cases to be called. I took the elevator to the third floor and found the family court waiting area. A row of plastic chairs, fluorescent lights overhead, a water fountain that had a handwritten "out of order" sign taped to it. Eleanor was already there, sitting in the corner, reviewing papers from her briefcase. Michael. She stood when she saw me. Right on time. Have you seen Daniel? Not yet, but he'll be here. This is his petition. We sat down together. Eleanor went over the procedure one more time, walking me through what would happen step by step. The judge would call the case, review the petition, ask if there were any objections or additional filings, and then make a ruling. At that point, Eleanor said, I'll present the statement of intent and the trust documentation. The judge will review it, explain the implications to Daniel, and ask if he wants to proceed. And what do you think he'll say? Honestly, I think he'll be shocked. I think he'll try to stop it, but it'll be too late. Good. Eleanor looked at me carefully. You know, Michael, it's not too late for you to stop this. Even now, even sitting here, you could withdraw your consent to the trust revocation. You could let him have the money anyway. Why would I do that? Because he's your son. He's the one who filed to legally separate himself from me. He's the one who decided I wasn't worth keeping in his life. I know, but I've been doing this work for 30 years, and I've seen a lot of family situations turn toxic over money. I just want to make sure you're not going to regret this later. I won't. She nodded and went back to her papers. At 9:55, Daniel arrived. He came through the door with Claire at his side. They were both dressed professionally, him in a charcoal suit, her in a navy dress and pearls. They looked like they'd stepped out of a corporate brochure. Daniel spotted me immediately. His expression flickered with surprise, then something else. Discomfort, maybe. He walked over. Hey, Dad. Daniel. Thanks for coming. He glanced at Eleanor, then back to me. This is just a formality, like I said. Should be quick. I didn't respond. Claire stayed a few feet back, not making eye contact with me. Her hand rested on her stomach, still flat, but the gesture was protective, maternal. Eleanor stood and introduced herself to Daniel's lawyer, a younger man in his 30s who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. They shook hands and exchanged professional pleasantries. At exactly 10 o'clock, a bailiff opened the courtroom door and called, Harrington Emancipation Petition. We all filed in. The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. Wood paneling, a raised judge's bench, a few rows of seats for observers. Everything smelled like old paper and floor polish. The judge was a woman in her 60s, gray hair pulled back, black robe, reading glasses perched on her nose. Her nameplate read, On Patricia Mercer. We took our seats, Daniel and his lawyer at one table, Eleanor and I at another. Claire sat in the first row behind Daniel. Judge Mercer reviewed the file in front of her for a moment, then looked up. This is a petition for adult emancipation filed by Daniel Harrington, seeking to legally separate himself from his biological father, Michael Harrington. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor, Daniel's lawyer said. The judge looked at me. And Mr. Harrington, the father, are you contesting this petition? Eleanor stood. No, Your Honor, Mr. Harrington is not contesting the emancipation. Judge Mercer raised an eyebrow. That's unusual. In most cases, at least one party objects. Mr. Harrington has no objection to his son's request, Eleanor said. However, we do have additional documentation that's relevant to the case. Additional documentation? Yes, Your Honor. May I approach? The judge gestured, and Eleanor walked forward with a folder. She handed it to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. Judge Mercer opened the folder and began to read. The courtroom was silent. I watched Daniel out of the corner of my eye. He was leaning back in his chair, looking relaxed, confident, like someone who'd already won and was just waiting for the paperwork to be finalized. He had no idea. After several minutes, Judge Mercer looked up. Her expression had changed. The bored efficiency was gone, replaced with something sharper. "Mr. Daniel Harrington," she said, "are you aware that your father established a trust fund in your name when you were 6 years old?" Daniel blinked. "I'm sorry, what?" "A trust fund, established in 1997, currently valued at approximately $1.4 million. The courtroom went very still. Daniel stared at the judge. No, I didn't know about that." "And are you aware that the terms of this trust include a conditional clause stating that if you initiate legal separation from your father, your beneficiary status is immediately revoked and all assets revert to his control?" Daniel's face had gone pale. "What?" Judge Mercer held up the document. "It's all here, very clearly stated. By filing this emancipation petition, you triggered the trust revocation clause." "But I didn't know." "Ignorance of the terms doesn't negate them," the judge said. "The trust was legally established and the conditions were clearly outlined. Your father has provided documentation showing that the trust was created with your benefit in mind, but with explicit protections in place to ensure familial respect." Daniel turned in his seat to look at me. "Dad, what is she talking about?" I met his gaze but said nothing. Eleanor stood. "Your Honor, if I may. The trust was created by Mr. Michael Harrington as a gift to his son, intended to provide financial security for Daniel's future. However, Mr. Harrington included the conditional clause as a safeguard. He wanted to ensure that his son understood the value of family and the importance of maintaining that relationship." "And now that the petition has been filed?" Judge Mercer asked. "Now the conditions for revocation have been met. Even if Mr. Daniel Harrington withdraws his petition today, the trust clause has already been triggered. The money will revert to Mr. Michael Harrington's control." Daniel's lawyer stood up quickly. "Your Honor, my client was not aware of this trust when he filed the petition. He had no knowledge of these financial implications. Surely we can what?" Judge Mercer interrupted. "Undo a legal action because it had unintended consequences? That's not how the law works, Counselor." "But your client filed a petition to legally separate himself from his father. That petition was initiated voluntarily, without coercion, and with full legal counsel available to him. The fact that he didn't do his due diligence before filing is not the court's problem." Daniel stood up. "Your Honor, I need to speak." "Sit down, Mr. Harrington." "But I didn't know." "Sit down." Daniel sat. Judge Mercer removed her glasses and looked at him directly. "Mr. Harrington, I've presided over a lot of emancipation cases. Most of them involve minors trying to escape abusive situations. Some involve adults cutting ties with genuinely harmful family members. But this?" She gestured at the file. "This is different." She picked up Daniel's petition and read from it. "You claim that legal separation is necessary for estate planning purposes and to establish clear financial boundaries. You make no allegations of abuse, neglect, or harm. You simply want to erase your father from your legal life because it's convenient." Daniel's jaw tightened. "And now you discover that your father, the man you're trying to legally disown, has been quietly setting aside money for you for almost 3 decades. Money he never mentioned, never held over your head, never used as leverage. He just saved it, invested it, and planned to give it to you when the time was right." She set the papers down. "And your response to finding out about this was to file paperwork to cut him out of your life entirely." "I didn't know about the money," Daniel said quietly. "No, you didn't. But you knew you had a father who raised you alone, who paid for your education, who supported you, who was there for you, and you decided that wasn't worth preserving." The courtroom was silent. Judge Mercer put her glasses back on and made some notes on the file. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to approve this emancipation petition as requested. Effective immediately, all legal connections between Michael Harrington and Daniel Harrington will be severed. Daniel will no longer be Michael's legal next of kin. Michael will have no legal relationship to any future grandchildren. All inheritance rights are nullified." She looked at Daniel. "And the trust? That's gone. Revoked. The $1.4 million that your father saved for you will remain in his control. You'll never see a penny of it." Daniel opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. "Do you still want to proceed with this emancipation?" Judge Mercer asked. Daniel looked at his lawyer, then at Claire, who was sitting very still in the row behind him, her face unreadable, then at me. He started. It's a simple question, the judge said. Do you want to proceed? Yes or no? Eleanor had told me this might happen, that Daniel might try to withdraw the petition once he understood what he was losing, but it was too late for that. Your Honor, Eleanor interjected. For the record, the trust revocation clause was triggered the moment the petition was filed, not when it's approved. Mr. Daniel Harrington has already forfeited his beneficiary status. Whether the emancipation moves forward or not, the trust conditions have been violated. Judge Mercer nodded. That's correct. So, Mr. Harrington, whether you proceed with this emancipation or withdraw the petition, you've already lost access to the trust. The only question now is whether you want to finalize the legal separation from your father. Daniel sat frozen. Take your time, the judge said, though her tone suggested she was running out of patience. Finally, Daniel's lawyer leaned over and whispered something to him. Daniel shook his head. The lawyer whispered again, more urgently. Daniel turned to look at me one more time. There was something in his expression I'd never seen before. Not quite panic, not quite regret. Something in between. Mr. Harrington, Judge Mercer prompted. I need an answer. Daniel took a breath. I want to withdraw the petition. Too late, the judge said flatly. The trust is already gone. You're just deciding now whether you want to maintain a legal relationship with your father or not. Daniel looked lost. I don't know. Then I'll decide for you. Based on the documentation provided and your clear intent when filing this petition, I'm approving the emancipation. All legal connections between you and Michael Harrington are hereby severed. This ruling is final. She brought down her gavel. The sound echoed in the small courtroom. We're adjourned. And just like that, it was over. After the judge's gavel fell, there was a moment of absolute stillness in the courtroom. No one moved, no one spoke. It was as if the air itself had frozen, holding us all in place. Then Claire stood up abruptly, the sound of her chair scraping against the floor breaking the spell. She walked out of the courtroom without looking at anyone, her heels clicking sharply on the tile floor. Daniel sat at his table, staring straight ahead. His lawyer was gathering papers, putting things back into his briefcase with quick, jerky movements. He kept glancing at Daniel like he wanted to say something, but couldn't figure out what. Eleanor touched my arm lightly. Let's go, she said quietly. I stood, and we walked toward the exit. As we passed Daniel's table, he looked up at me. Dad, he said. His voice was hoarse. I stopped. We looked at each other for a long moment. I could see him struggling, trying to find words that might fix this, might undo what had just happened, but there were no words that could do that. You knew, he said finally. You knew about the trust clause, and you didn't tell me. You didn't ask, I said. I didn't know there was anything to ask about. No, you didn't. Because you never bothered to find out what I'd done for you. You just assumed I hadn't done anything worth knowing about. His face flushed. That's not fair. Isn't it? You filed legal papers to erase me from your life without a single conversation about it. You made plans to remove me from your family's future without thinking I might have my own plans. I was trying to protect Claire's family assets. You were trying to make things convenient for yourself, I interrupted, and you didn't care what it cost me. You didn't even wonder. Daniel stood up, his hands gripping the edge of the table. So this is revenge? You're taking away my inheritance because I hurt your feelings? I'm not taking anything away from you, Daniel. You gave it away yourself. You could fix this. You could override the trust clause. I could, I agreed, but I'm not going to. Why? Because you need to understand that actions have consequences. You need to learn that you can't just erase people when they become inconvenient. I'm your son. Yes, you are. And I've spent your entire life proving that meant something to me. But apparently it doesn't mean anything to you? He opened his mouth to respond, but I was already walking toward the door. Eleanor followed me out into the hallway. Behind us, I heard Daniel call out again, Dad! But I didn't stop. We took the elevator down in silence. Eleanor didn't try to make conversation, didn't try to process what had just happened. She just stood beside me, professional and steady, giving me space. When we reached the lobby, I said, Thank you for your help with this. You're welcome, she said. Are you all right? I'm fine. Michael, I looked at her. It's okay to not be fine, she said gently. I nodded, but I didn't say anything else. We walked out of the courthouse together. The November air was cold and sharp, the sky a uniform gray. People moved past us on the sidewalk, going about their normal days, completely unaware that my entire relationship with my son had just been legally erased. What happens now? I asked. Paperwork, Eleanor said. The court will file the emancipation order. I'll make sure all your financial documents are updated to reflect the change. The trust will be formally closed and the assets will revert fully to your control. How long will that take? A few weeks, maybe a month. It's mostly administrative. We reached the parking lot. Eleanor's car was in the first row. Mine was farther back. If you need anything, she said, or if Daniel tries to contact you, call me. Don't engage with him directly until everything is finalized. I won't. She studied me for a moment longer, then nodded and walked to her car. I stood in the parking lot for a while after she left, not quite ready to get in my car and drive home. The courthouse loomed behind me, gray and imposing. Somewhere inside, Daniel was probably still sitting in that courtroom, trying to process what had happened. I wondered if Claire had waited for him, or if she'd left immediately. I wondered what they would say to each other, if he would blame me, or if he would understand, finally, that he'd done this to himself. But those weren't my problems anymore. I got in my car and drove. Not home, though, not yet. Instead, I drove to a coffee shop I used to go to sometimes, a small place on the edge of town that served decent coffee and had booths in the back where no one bothered you. I ordered black coffee and sat down in the corner, away from the windows. The place was mostly empty. A couple of college students with laptops. An older man reading a newspaper. The barista was wiping down the counter, moving in slow circles like she had all the time in the world. I pulled out my phone and stared at it. No messages from Daniel, no calls. I didn't know if that meant he was still in shock or if he'd already decided I wasn't worth reaching out to. Maybe both. I thought about the last time we'd had a real conversation, not the brief exchanges about documents or logistics, but an actual conversation where we talked about something that mattered. I couldn't remember when that had been. Years, probably. Somewhere along the way, we'd stopped being father and son and become distant acquaintances who shared DNA and occasionally remembered each other's birthdays. And I'd let it happen. That was the thing I kept coming back to as I sat in that coffee shop. I'd let it happen. I'd been passive, accepting, conflict avoidant. I'd told myself I was giving Daniel space to become his own person, but maybe I'd just been afraid of confrontation, afraid of demanding more because I didn't want to be seen as needy or overbearing. But there was a difference between being a good father who let his child grow up and being a doormat who accepted any treatment because he didn't think he deserved better. I'd crossed that line somewhere, and I hadn't even noticed until it was too late. My coffee was getting cold. I drank it anyway. Around noon, my phone buzzed. I looked at the screen, expecting another friend offering sympathy or asking if I was okay. Instead, it was a message from an unknown number. Mr. Harrington, this is Claire. Can we talk? I stared at the message. Claire had never contacted me directly before. Everything had always gone through Daniel. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I finished my coffee, left the shop, and drove home. Only when I was sitting in my kitchen, in the familiar quiet of the house I'd lived in for 3 decades, did I reply. What do you want to talk about? Her response came quickly. I'd like to meet in person, just the two of us. Would that be possible? Why? Because I think there are things that need to be said. I considered it. Part of me wanted to refuse, to cut off any further contact with Daniel's world, but another part, a smaller, quieter part, was curious. When? I typed. Tomorrow? I know a place near your house, a cafe called the Riverside. Do you know it? I did. It was about 10 minutes away, a small place that served breakfast and lunch. 1 o'clock, I replied. Thank you. I set my phone down and looked around my empty house. The silence felt heavier than usual, louder somehow. That night, I didn't sleep well. I kept waking up, checking the clock, drifting back into uneasy dreams where I was searching for something I couldn't find. The next morning, I got up early, made coffee, and tried to focus on normal things. I read the news, I did a load of laundry, I paid some bills online, but my mind kept circling back to the meeting with Claire. What did she want? To convince me to restore the trust? To plead Daniel's case? To tell me what a terrible father I was? I had no idea. At 12:30, I got in my car and drove to the Riverside. It was a quiet Saturday afternoon, the streets mostly empty. The cafe was a small brick building with large windows and outdoor seating that was closed for the season. I parked and went inside. Claire was already there, sitting at a corner table with a cup of tea in front of her. She saw me and raised a hand slightly in acknowledgement. I ordered coffee at the counter and joined her. Thank you for coming, she said. You asked. She wrapped her hands around her teacup, not drinking from it. She looked tired. dark circles under her eyes, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail instead of the polished style she usually wore. "I'm not here to ask you to change your mind," she said. "Good, because I wouldn't." "I know." She took a breath. "I'm here because I need to understand what happened. Daniel's version of events doesn't make sense, and I think there's more to this story than he's telling me." I sipped my coffee and waited. "He said you had a trust fund he didn't know about," she continued, "and that by filing the emancipation petition, he lost access to it. But he's not explaining why the trust had that clause in the first place. He's not explaining why you never told him about it." "What do you think the answer is?" I asked. "I think you put that clause in because you were afraid of exactly this, of him pushing you away." "That's part of it." "What's the rest?" I set my cup down. "The rest is that I wanted my son to value me as a person, not as a bank account. I wanted him to maintain a relationship with me because he wanted to, not because he was waiting for an inheritance." Claire nodded slowly. "And instead, he tried to legally remove you from his life." "Yes." "For estate planning reasons." "Yes." She was quiet for a moment, looking down at her tea. "That was my family's idea," she said quietly. "The legal separation. My father's lawyers suggested it. They said it would protect our assets if anything happened, keep things clean for future generations. And Daniel agreed to it. He did, but I don't think he fully understood what it meant. Or maybe he did, and he just didn't care." Her voice cracked slightly. "I don't know anymore." "Why are you telling me this?" She looked up, meeting my eyes. "Because I'm about to have a baby, and I keep thinking about what it would feel like if 30 years from now my child tried to erase me, if they filed paperwork to legally pretend I never existed. It's not a good feeling. No, I imagine it's not." She twisted the napkin in her hands. "Daniel's not a bad person, Mr. Harrington, but he's thoughtless sometimes. He doesn't see beyond his own perspective, and I've been enabling that. I've been agreeing with him, supporting decisions without really questioning them. And now? Now I'm questioning everything." She looked down at her stomach, still flat beneath her sweater. "I don't want to raise a child who thinks family is disposable. I don't want my son or daughter to grow up believing that people are only valuable as long as they're useful." I didn't know what to say to that. "I'm sorry," she said, "for my part in this, for not seeing what was happening until it was too late." "It's not your apology to make. This was between me and Daniel." "Maybe, but I was involved. I supported it. I thought it was smart and practical, and I didn't stop to think about what it meant for you." We sat in silence for a while. The cafe was quiet around us, just the soft hum of the espresso machine and the distant sound of traffic outside. "Are you going to leave him?" I asked. "No," she said, "but things need to change. He needs to understand what he did, what he lost." "He lost $1.4 million. He lost more than that," Claire said. "He lost you." I felt something tighten in my chest, but I didn't let it show. Claire stood, leaving her tea mostly untouched. "Thank you for meeting with me. I know I don't have any right to ask anything of you, but if you're ever willing to talk to Daniel again, I think it would mean a lot. Not now. Maybe not for a long time, but someday." "Maybe," I said, though I didn't believe it. She nodded and walked out of the cafe. I sat there for a long time after she left, drinking my coffee, watching people pass by the windows. The truth was, I didn't know if I'd ever be able to talk to Daniel again. Not really talk, because the trust between us, the kind that had nothing to do with money, was broken, and I didn't know if it could be repaired. 3 weeks after the hearing, I received a package in the mail from Eleanor's office. It was thick and official, the kind of envelope that announces its importance before you even open it. I carried it inside and set it on the kitchen table. Inside was a complete copy of all the finalized paperwork. The emancipation order, signed by Judge Mercer. The trust revocation documents officially processed. Updated account statements showing the full amount back under my sole control. There was also a cover letter from Eleanor. "Michael, everything is finalized. As of this date, you have no legal relationship to Daniel Harrington. All financial assets previously designated for his benefit have been returned to your control. If you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to contact me. Eleanor." I spread the documents across the table and looked at them. $1.4 million. 30 years of saving, investing, planning, all of it sitting in accounts with only my name on them now. I should have felt something. Relief, maybe. Satisfaction. The sense that justice had been served. But mostly I just felt tired. My phone rang. I looked at the screen. Robert Hale. Hey, Robert. Michael, how are you holding up? I'm fine. That's not what I asked. I sighed. I'm managing. Have you heard from Daniel? No. At all? Not since the courthouse. There was a pause on the other end. That's probably for the best. Probably. Listen, Robert said. I'm calling because a group of us are getting together next weekend. Old crew from the Riverside Project. Just drinks and catching up. You should come. I don't know. Michael, you need to get out of that house. You've been alone with this for weeks. Come have a beer with people who actually give a damn about you. I'll think about it. That means no. It means I'll think about it. Robert laughed. Fair enough. But seriously, the offer stands. We'd love to see you. After we hung up, I looked at the documents on the table again. Then I gathered them all up, put them back in the envelope, and filed it away in my home office. It was done. The next morning was a Sunday. I woke up early, made coffee, and sat in my kitchen watching the sunrise through the window. The light came in slowly, warming the room degree by degree. My phone was on the table in front of me. No messages, no calls. I'd been checking it compulsively for weeks, some part of me still expecting Daniel to reach out, to say something, to acknowledge what had happened, but there was nothing. Maybe there never would be. I thought about the conversation with Claire at the cafe, the way she'd looked at me with something like understanding, the way she'd apologized even though it wasn't her place to do so. She was right about one thing. Daniel wasn't a bad person. He was just someone who'd never had to think about consequences because I'd always been there to soften them. Someone who'd grown up taking for granted the stability and security I'd provided because he'd never known what it was like to be without it. And now he was learning. That was the real lesson in all of this. Not the money. The money was just a symbol. The real lesson was that relationships require effort. That family isn't a permanent fixture you can ignore until you need something. That love and respect have to be reciprocated, not just received. I didn't know if Daniel would learn that lesson or not, but it wasn't my job to teach him anymore. Around noon, my phone buzzed with a text. I picked it up, expecting spam or a message from Robert. Instead, it was from Daniel. Can we talk? Please? I stared at the screen. 3 weeks of silence, and now this. I considered ignoring it, letting him sit with the same absence he'd given me for years, but I was too tired for pettiness. What do you want to talk about? I typed. Everything. I need to explain. I need you to understand. Understand what? Why I did what I did. What I was thinking. I need you to know I didn't mean to hurt you. I set the phone down and walked to the window. Outside, the neighborhood was quiet. A few cars parked on the street. A kid riding a bike down the sidewalk. Normal Sunday stillness. You're lying, I typed back. What? You did mean to hurt me. Maybe not consciously, but you didn't care enough to consider whether you would or not. And that's worse. Dad, please, I'm trying to apologize. No, you're not. You're trying to fix a problem that's costing you money. If the trust clause hadn't existed, we wouldn't be having this conversation. There was a long pause before his next message. You're right. I wasn't expecting that. I'm right? I typed. Yes, you're right. If there was no money involved, I probably wouldn't have thought twice about the legal separation. I probably would have just done it and moved on with my life. At least he was being honest. But I'm thinking about it now, he continued. I'm thinking about what I did and what it means, and I'm realizing I've been a selfish piece of garbage for a long time. I read the message twice. Claire talked to me, he wrote, after she met with you. She said some things I needed to hear about how I've been treating you, about the example I'm setting for our kid. And she's right, about all of it. I've been taking you for granted my entire life, acting like you were just there to serve my needs and then disappearing when I didn't need anything. I sat back down at the table. I don't know if you can forgive me, Daniel wrote. I don't know if you should, but I'm asking anyway, not because of the money, that's gone and I understand why, but because you're my father and I threw that away like it meant nothing. I looked at my phone for a long time. Then I typed, I need time. I understand. Maybe a lot of time. I get it. And even with time, I don't know if I can trust you again. You hurt me, Daniel. Deeply. I know. I'm sorry. Sorry isn't enough. Then what is? I thought about the question. What would be enough? What could possibly repair the damage that had been done? I don't know, I typed honestly. But I know it's not a text message conversation. Can we meet face to face? Not yet. When? When I'm ready. There was a long pause and then, okay, I'll wait. I set my phone down and sat in my quiet kitchen for a long time. Outside, the sun climbed higher in the sky. The day moved forward, indifferent to everything that had happened, everything that had been broken. Inside, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness. I wasn't there yet. Might never be there. But maybe the possibility of it. Someday, or maybe not. Either way, I had time to figure it out. For the first time in weeks, that felt like enough. I stood up, poured the rest of my coffee down the sink, and opened the window to let in the cold November air. The house was quiet. But it was my house. My life. My choices going forward. And that was worth something. The phone rang again,